Get Gutsy, episode number 218 with Tara Mullarkey. Embodied wealthy women will change the world. Welcome to Get Gutsy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennig, and I am so excited to be on this journey with you. A cutting edge show blending business and spirituality, Get Gutsy serves up a potent blend of stories, lessons, and tips to help you make a massive impact in the world through your soul's work and your inspired life. No more going it alone, no more excuses. The world needs more brave women saying yes to leadership. Are you with me? Good. Let's get gutsy now. Hey there, Jenny here. Welcome to another episode. I love these consistent hangouts we get to have together. Listen, when this episode goes live, I will be on the open seas, cruising with my family. I love to cruise. I do. I've been on lots of cruises, and it's one of my favorite ways to travel. It really is. Steven and I went on a cruise for our honeymoon way back when, 14 years ago. And it was the first time he'd ever been on a cruise. And I felt like it was going to be awesome. But then there was also the piece of me that said, and what if he hates it? That's not a great way to start our marriage. But he loved it. We went on a Mediterranean cruise back then. And right now, when this goes live, I'll be on a cruise around New England and parts of Canada. So send me cruising vibes and unplugging vibes, because that's very much what I'll be doing. That's what I love so much about cruising too. You're not really hanging out around computers and your phone. You're doing other things. You're just chilling. You're seeing other stuff and giving yourself some space to enjoy the people you're with and feel into what's next for you in the work. So, oh my gosh, do I have a guest for you today? You're going to love this conversation. I had seen her online for a while. We had connected once about potentially working together, and then that didn't happen. Kind of things were shifting for her, and you're going to hear about that on the episode today, just her own evolution. And then, as I was really feeling into what guests do I want to have in 2019, here she was. So you have her today. Her name is Tara Mullarkey. Before I tell you more about the episode, want to make sure you know a few things that are happening that you need to know they're happening. One, hop into Gabby Bernstein's video training series. All right, I've been talking about this, been posting about this. We have a Facebook ads campaign and Instagram ads running around this, really putting energy around this video training, because I'm a big believer in her course, which is called Spirit Junkie Masterclass. Very soon, I'll be telling you how you will have the opportunity to work with both Gabby and myself in a pretty powerful way. Not even a pretty powerful, like an ultra powerful way. So you can hop into her latest video at jennyfennig.com/Gabby3, and that's the number 3. All right, if you go to our show notes page for this, you'll see all the links. And that series is really about making a great impact, doing what you love, getting paid in more ways than one. So hop into that and keep your eyes open for when the enrollment opens for that course and what you'll get when you join the course through my special link. It is hotter than hot. The other way you might want to play and work with me is through my mastermind. I am interviewing candidates for my mastermind in June. We have half of our spots filled, and I'm pumped to see who is going to step into these remaining spots. My mastermind is the creme de la creme. It is the most powerful, exquisite OMG experience you can imagine, with me at the helm. And oh my goodness, are we going to have a blast? So if you'd like to be considered and hop on a call with me to talk about your work and where you're headed and what's holding you back and how willing you are to get visible and bold with the moves you're making, then go to jennyfennig.com/apply. That's jennyfennig.com/apply. And let's see what's possible when we would join forces. Okay, so Tara Mullarkey, holy wow, we go all the places on this talk today. Here's the deal. Being a coach and growing your business is a spiritual quest and a faith walk. This journey will bring you to your knees. You must be willing to heal your wounds and become the strongest leader possible. This is not easy. You'll have many twists and turns, and you'll meet so many incredible people on the journey with messages you are meant to receive. Tara Mullarkey is one of these women I am blessed to have met, and you'll know why when you tune into today's episode. I'm sharing her brilliance with you. You're going to get a tremendous amount of value out of this. So, really, the final message for you before I open up the doors for you to sit down with us is to get ready to get rocked. Get ready to get rocked. We are talking about all the things that some people do not talk about, including why you should embrace the fact that therapy is necessary and not taboo. If you really want to go big and bold in your work as a coach, you need to look at your healing journey. And it's not a one-time thing either. This is an ongoing process. I speak from experience, and this episode does this work justice and does this topic a tremendous amount of justice. So enjoy this episode with me and Tara. The theme is Embodied Wealthy Women Will Change the World.
Tara Mullarkey, welcome to Get Gutsy.
Yay! Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here, Jenny.
Yeah, and so you are in San Diego. I am through that warmth. As I shared, we talked a little bit in the pre-show. I'm here in New England, Western Massachusetts. You shared you grew up in Connecticut.
Yeah.
I know you've done a tremendous amount of travel, but how'd you get to California? How'd you pick San Diego as your place?
Good question. I think I always kind of felt like a California girl at heart. And, even when I think back on when I lived in, grew up in Connecticut, then lived in Manhattan and New York City for a while. I always wanted to be in the warmth. Like I never was down with cold weather ever. Everyone in my life that grew up with me knew that. Every time I got a chance, I would be like going to some island or something. Then I traveled a lot, which like we might get into later. And I always found myself like on, the warm, wherever it was the warmest and a beach and all of that. So when I moved back to the States, I just kind of knew that it'd have to be California. One, the weather, but also the community, of just doing what I do. I wanted to be surrounded by other people who are, conscious and like-minded. And so that's why I couldn't see myself, say, in Florida. I mean, I don't know, that could happen one day, but I don't see that right now.
Yeah, there's many conscious and like-minded people there. Well, you might not know this fun fact about me, but I am from Florida. I was born in Florida. Oh yeah, but I totally understand what you're saying. I was born in St. Petersburg, which is near Tampa. Spent a good amount of my childhood in Georgia, and then went down for middle and high school and college back to Florida, but on the other coast, went to University of Florida. So I have like warm weather in my bones. So when I talk to my guests and they're living in warm places, I'm like, yeah, I know. I have a hard time with the cold. I'm not gonna lie.
Because some people like it. Like my brother, for example, he just doesn't like hot weather at all. And
I know you're super into yoga and all that. And I feel like if you really study Ayurveda, you just know, because they're pitta.
Exactly. They're running fire all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. He is a fireball. And so he cannot stand Florida or any warm place. He like flips out. And so I say to him, look, we'll go to a warm place. His parents spent half the year in Florida and he's complaining on, whatever day 2. I'm like, dude, okay. I spend months being cold because I'm very Vata, I'm up in the clouds and I'm flying. Yeah. And so I've had to really surrender. There's a lot of lessons in winter and in cold. I've learned to layer.
Yes. You need the right gear. Like I just moved back to California from Colorado. I was in LA and then I went to Colorado to Boulder for a bit and I wanted to try it out. And I guess there was this part of me that was like, I don't know, like maybe I'll just go back to my roots a little bit. And everyone said, but like Colorado's so much better than East Coast winters or Midwest winters, which it is. I'll give it that. But, and there's so many things I loved about Boulder and the beauty of Colorado, but ultimately I was about to buy a house and I was looking to buy houses there. And then I had this epiphany like, wait, what the F are you doing, Tara? Like you love the beach and the warm weather and like kind of wearing no clothes. So this doesn't work for you.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I totally hear you. It's awesome that you're there. All right. So let's start kind of at the beginning of the career journey. So much of what we talk about here in Get Gutsy is how did you get to where you are? A lot of my audience, some of them are newer coaches, maybe newer in business, or they've had established careers in corporate. They've been really good at one thing, but they're kind of moving more into this coaching modality, this field where they're developing this platform online. And then others are like, WTF am I doing? You know, how do I find what I love to do? Because that was my journey. That was the theme of my first book, Get Gutsy, was how do you go from lost to finding what you're here to do and be able to make a living doing that, working wherever you want, living wherever you want, working with whomever you want. So what did you go to school for? What did you think you were going to do with your life?
So I had a corporate finance Wall Street career. Okay. Believe it or not, it feels like a past life. So I studied economics undergrad, and I say that because that's what happened, but I say it then and I think what I really wanted to study was psychology. So like when I tell my story, all of my life, I was really interested in personal and spiritual development. Like always, I was like this very mature for my age, you know, growing up and reading books that like no one was reading, and was always about self-help, personal development, spirituality. At the time, Christianity, because that's how I grew up, but I don't really align with that religion anymore. It's more of like a spiritual, you know, belief. But that was always just where I wanted to be. So I studied economics, and that came from this.
So why did you not study psychology? Why did you choose?
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things. One is this culture, you know, the sort of conditioning that, you know, you need to make a living and make a good living. And that was also then strengthened and informed by, I grew up in a first generation American home. My parents were immigrants from Ireland, and they didn't finish high school. You know, they like left home on their farms in Ireland, you know, before they finished school, and they went to London to work. And then they like, you know, found themselves with the blessing of being able to come to the States and create a life. And really what they wanted for us was to create a good financial life. Like that was the focus, you know? And then my parents, like additional to that, like my parents got divorced. And so my mom was a single mom, and that informed all of it. I started working in offices as part-time jobs really early. I put myself through college mostly. And so, you know, I wanted, like my heart was in how people think and how people behave. And that was really fascinating to me. But I was like, I'm not going to go get a PhD and that's the only way you can make any money, or, you know, like whatever the limiting beliefs I had around that. So I studied economics because I wanted to graduate the fastest. And I wanted to like guarantee that I was going to have a good job. And I was already working at like hedge funds and trading firms at that time. So that sort of was the easy thing to study.
How long did you stay in that world, in the Wall Street world?
7 years out of college. And I had just finished my MBA, and then the financial.
Did they pay for you to get your MBA? Okay, so that was nice. You got a free education. You got that free.
There's lots of benefits. You know, like I lived a really, really cool lifestyle for, you know, those years. And I think that informs just sort of like an up leveling of really what I require or what I expect from life now, you know, even though I wouldn't do it that way. But, you know, like I traveled for work to cool places, and we had like really nice dinners out and all this Wall Street stuff. and then I got laid off. So part of my story is that I got laid off in 2009. So it was the crisis most people know about 10 years ago. And, luckily for me, I guess, like, it wasn't a big wound because hundreds of people were getting laid off. So I didn't really have a lot of, I didn't take it personally. I knew. But the most interesting part of that story, Jenny, is that I manifested it. And I know that, I manifested, even though there were hundreds of people, I don't think that I would have been on that list, except I had already started to do this spiritual work around 6 months prior. I had a spiritual awakening. And I realized, I got clear that this work wasn't my destiny, and this wasn't lighting me up. And I was here to do something way bigger, way more meaningful. And so I started working the law of attraction. That was sort of one of my first, gateways into the power of the mind. I studied Eckhart Tolle as well, A New Earth, and just sort of had that awakening. And 6 months later, they told me I was laid off and gave me a severance package. And I literally happily walked out the door.
Love that. I've heard many a story where someone is not happy. They start really opening up to, wow, there's something else out there for me. And then the universe just hooked you up because you got paid to leave.
Yeah. And that's really what that is alignment, So once you start doing that work, you wake up and then you start doing the work to align with it. The universe has to just sort of make it happen. What is now no longer in alignment and what is in alignment, right? So that job became actually no longer vibrationally alignment with vibrationally aligned with who I was becoming or who I am.
So what did you do next? What happened? I know you did a lot of traveling. Is that when this occurred?
Yeah. So the story could go on for a long time, but I went to my first yoga teacher training. I had no intention of becoming a yoga teacher at all, but they, kind of sold the teacher training like it was just really an immersion. And I knew at that time, I wanted to get out of New York. It was February in New York City, and I wanted to go somewhere warm. And I was really only craving meditation and quiet. I knew I needed to quiet my mind. I had a lot of fear coming up. I really didn't know what was next, and I had no idea what I would even be qualified to do if it wasn't this. I had people, connections in the industry wanting me to go for interviews, but I knew that was a no. And so I just didn't know what to do, but I wanted to meditate and I wanted to learn this thing that was opening up in me. And I went for 30 days. So it was a total immersion away from home. And those 30 days were some of the hardest. Was a real initiation into
this was in India? In India?
No, this one was the Shivananda ashram in the Bahamas.
Oh, in the Bahamas. Okay. Yeah. Great. So you did your yoga teacher training at the Shivananda.
Yeah. And I wasn't at all ready to go to India at that time.
That would have I needed to jump. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was there 6 months later. So it did happen pretty quickly, but I definitely wasn't ready coming out of Manhattan.
Totally.
And I didn't have any idea of this life at all until I went to the yoga teacher training. And I often tell the story, they had us getting up at 5 and in the temple by 5:30 to chant. And I remember the first couple of days being what the F is this? No, I literally was wearing, business suits and stuff and heels walking the streets of Manhattan a few days before. And now I'm going into some place where they're singing in Sanskrit to some gods. And I'm I have no idea what you're talking about. But it was 3 days later and I was singing these chants I had known them my entire life. I mean, it was really incredible. So fast forward 30 days, that happened. And then I came back to New York. I sold all my stuff. I gave up my stuff. And I subletted my place. And then I flew to Thailand. So I traveled for what ended up being 3 years. It was supposed to be 6 months at the time. I was leaving in May. I was going to be home, back home near my family by the holidays. And I didn't come back home.
So awesome. I love that. I want to hear about that journey. And I will share with you too. I have such a similar story. I mean, I trained to become a yoga teacher in New York City. When I quit my 6-year corporate job, I signed up for the teacher training, was 2 months in. I did a 3-month, 200-hour, stretched over three months. And it was in the last like few weeks that I just walked into work one day. I was like, oh my God, today's the day. Like, and you were almost more fortunate because they laid you off, you know, and you got paid.
Totally.
I had to freaking do it. You know, I'm like,
I know.
Up with people. So I'm like, oh God, I have to like break up with this person. And it's really hard. And I am making good money, as I know you were too. And, but yeah, it just cracked me wide open. And I went to an ashram afterwards and all that stuff. Okay. So you cruised over. Yeah. I mean, it's just funny. And I've talked to so many people on the show and like that's the journey.
Yeah.
And I have to like go back and actually assess that. Like, what is the percentage of women I've talked to who did the yoga thing? And that cracked me wide freaking open.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to really look at. So you end up being abroad for 3 years after thinking 6 months. Well, did you need to earn money during that time, or did you have enough saved from your last life to be able to get you through this? Or were you getting paid anything by doing work online? Like, what was the deal during that time? How did you make that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think most people ask me that. Cause it's like, how could I do that? I don't, you know, so many, I know listeners, right? Like, so I had a severance and I had some savings, and also living in India and Thailand and Bali are pretty cheap. So like I was good. I like did some consulting work online, but I didn't really build anything at that time. Like I just had people who reached out to me who wanted to do some work with me in that way. But, that was really it. Like, I mean, I was teaching some yoga, but like wasn't doing that for money at all. I was just sort of like sharing my love of it. So yeah,
so
like
like a sabbatical almost, it sounds like you were
and I was not planning. Yeah, I was not planning it to be that long. What it really became was then I started healing a lot of familial wounds, a lot of things that came up from childhood, a lot of like ways that I realized I was living according to other people. And the only way that I was going to find like me and what I wanted and what my soul, like I started understanding there was like this soul inside this physical body that like had lived lifetimes before and came here with a destiny to like deliver. The only way that I was going to like find her and listen to her without the voice of my mother and my family who says, this is what life is and this is what you should be doing, was to spend more time like away from everyone.
Yeah. So let's dive in there, because this is a topic that I personally have a lot of interest in as well. And I know our listeners do. This familial wounds. Did you meet healers over there that you were doing this work with? How did you start kind of unpacking this and getting some understanding about, whoa, like what's yours? What did you come here with? Wait, these were old things that you were living under that aren't really true. How did this start coming to life when you were on this sabbatical adventure?
Yeah, I mean, there's like a couple of things. Like most recently, and you might get there, Jenny, like most recently over the last 2 years, I've done like the deepest work of my life on this stuff. And so when I think back to that time, which is about 8-9 years ago at this point, like I didn't even come into what I now know as like some of the deepest attachment connection wounds that happened from, you know, early childhood. So we can talk about that, but just to answer your question back then, it was like the initial stages, which I think is important for the listeners, right? Because it was just those initial stages of understanding that I had these cords that were so deeply embedded in survival of being a part of this family unit and like the story of who I am and what makes me worthy. That's what I started to like let go of. You know, like my mom was really upset when I told her after 6 months, I was in Australia at the time, and that I wasn't coming home. And, you know, at that time, and she started thinking like I must've been on drugs because, and like, this is like, I never did drugs in my life. Honestly, I've only smoked weed. So like, it would be totally a stretch for her to now start thinking her like high achieving MBA daughter is like doing drugs. But that if it gives you perspective, like that's how different my life was. I didn't care really about like coming back and creating a new career at that time. I knew I just needed to heal. And for her and everyone that knew me was like, something has to be wrong, you know? So, but I knew at that time that that's actually exactly what needed to happen, even though it didn't make sense to anyone else. Like my soul needed to like emerge, if you will, needed to like start to just heal. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I get it. I totally get it. So, wow. What made you want to come back then? You spent 3 years there. Then what was that turning
Yeah.
point?
3 years.
All right. I'm complete. Let's go. Let's go back to the US.
Yeah. It was 3 years amongst many different places. And then I started traveling with a boyfriend at the time. And then we ended up breaking up. We went back to Italy where he was from. And we ended up ending our relationship. And it was at that point that I was like, okay, maybe it's time to go back. And there was some trainings that I wanted to do stateside. Like I was starting to come into that, like, okay, maybe I want to go back, but my landing pad would be like my mom's. So I knew that that wasn't going to like be for very long. And like my mom and I have a great relationship now. I don't want to paint her as like a terrible person, but like, you know, it's just like a natural thing. And I think it's important actually for all women to start to examine the mother wound and things that come up around the mother, and not like align so much with our mom just because of shame that if we say anything bad. Like all of us have wounds and traumas with our mom, and it's really important to do that. And then even if you're a mom, to start to like recognize like your children are probably going to have wounds with you, and like this is just part of life, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I came back to the States. I did some trainings. And then within 6 months, I decided to move to Tulum, Mexico. And that's where I knew I was going to start doing some of the healing work. Like I had studied body work, energy work, tantra, and yoga, meditation, all when I was overseas, like Reiki, all the trainings that I could do while I was over, you know, on the east side of the world, like I did. And then I came back, and that was my first stepping stone. I didn't really see myself as a coach at that time. I just was like, okay, let me start taking these things that I learned. And I knew that I wanted to share them because they had changed my life so much. And so I found a yoga teaching job in Tulum. And I went there and kind of like instantly felt like it was home. Anyone who's been there can, you know, resonate. The energy is very potent, and I felt like home. And I spent another 3 years I spent another 3 years living there.
Wow. Yeah. Tulum is off the hook. I've been there twice, led retreats there twice. And it's like, you get there and everyone needs to go there. It's so good. It's so good. All right. So you're doing mostly yoga healing type work in Tulum during this time. Okay. Got it. And then what happens?
And then I did start to, you know, like I was sharing online the whole time around my journey, and I started to realize that there was just like this following happening, like many women who wanted to, just like they were inspired by me, you know, they kept like reaching out and saying like how much I inspire them, how much sharing my journey, also like me bumping up against my visibility barriers, the shame. Like my mom also had a big like problem with me sharing online some of the vulnerable pieces, but I was doing it anyway. And then I'd get this amazing feedback from women who like saw it and had like a complete transformation or motivation to like live their life differently. And that started really motivating me to the point where I was like, okay, I could see myself, like, I think this is what I'm supposed to do.
Like talking about this and leading women through this transformation in lots of different categories.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so, and then my first step was B school, and like, you know, just kind of Marie's way of talking to women. I think these were the beginning stages before all of us were around, really. I think it was like this beginning of this movement of women started waking up from their spiritual awakening or their transformation in their life, whether they left a job or a marriage or some kind of life transformation, and realized that they had something to deliver on the planet. Their soul had a plan or a mission, and they have a message and they wanted to share it. So that was like me too. She was sort of speaking to me, and that's when I started my coaching business. Like that's when it was probably 2 years into living in Tulum. I started my website and I started putting programs together and sort of like seeing myself as a coach and a speaker and an author and, you know, all of that. Yeah.
Okay. So how did you really get the business off the ground then? I mean, you're still in Tulum, you're doing, you're teaching yoga in person, but you're,
Yeah.
in Beats going like, oh, wait, hold on. There's this whole internet thing and people seem to be resonating with what I'm sharing. Oh, people will pay me to share this stuff, but in,
Right.
different formats, like a program or a one-on-one relationship. So do you remember like what your first offer was? Like, how did you start making money online?
Yeah. I think Spiritual Newbie was my first program.
Uh-huh.
And so I started enrolling women into that program. And then I was also doing private coaching. Like I really didn't know how to package, I guess. And, knowing what I know now, it's hard to think back and be like, well, what was I doing? I guess I was doing very beginner things where it's almost like a combination of, I don't know, like the know-how, and then also like the limiting belief, like what's possible, like people will really pay, like, and just kind of bumping up against that, and then doing my own work. Obviously that was like a big part of it. It's just like being in my own practice and doing my own work. And so, yeah, like I just started like blogging, I guess, and, offering my program. And then it was sort of like little fast forward. I started doing retreats, like hosting retreats, like my own women. So at the beginning, when I first moved there, I was actually leading retreats that other people were, they had already established a business around like Tulum retreats, and so like I would be the teacher. And then I started, as I built my audience, I started gathering women a few times a year for my retreats in Tulum. And so that's how that began. And then, like little fast forward, it did become like my vision started to expand. I saw myself having like a multi-million-dollar company, and Tulum lifestyle doesn't really like allow for that, if you will. Like there's Wi-Fi problems, and the sort of community is just wanting to be there just to like hang out and chill. And so I just was craving, it was finally like, okay, I want to get back to like the States and like go for it, And so that's what made me move to LA.
Okay. So you went to LA. And I remember at one point, because I think that's how you and I first connected, you were doing either consulting around like Facebook ads, funnels, like that kind of world. So did you eventually for a lot of women, we fall in love with this world. We're like, oh my, there's so many ways you can take it. Your evolution, it sounded like you were doing the programs and the retreats, and people were really resonating with you. And then you had this deeper vision, like, hey, I could freaking go for it. And plus you had the background working in corporate and Wall Street.
Yeah.
You worked with big budgets and you were around a lot of money. And that's helpful because you see, oh wait, this is totally possible. Like this is a whole world. And so I see that with some of my clients and just people I see in this space. And a lot of times they became an entrepreneur because they didn't really make good money before. And so when we have that background, having made good money, like that was me. I didn't become an entrepreneur because I made shit money in corporate. It's just, I needed that wasn't my path.
So true.
So when you see, oh yeah, I need to realign myself here because I know money is everywhere.
Right.
How did you get to that point? Like, what did you do to start freaking just really growing the business? And then continue to evolve.
Yeah. Yeah. It did become like, I did start to meld the spirituality and the business, and I started learning a lot of strategies to grow my own business. And then just what naturally happened is women started coming to me. I think, just cause I do have a business mind, even though I'm like really spiritual, there was like a lot of woo woo, if you will, like women coming to me going like, gosh, I know that I know my vision. I know that I have this message, but like, I have no idea how to do this business thing. Like this scares me. I don't get strategy and I don't like it. And I don't want to really like know it. So can you help me? So those were the women coming to me, and I had learned about webinars and Facebook ads and funnels and how to really grow, also aligning with like putting some stuff on autopilot. Like how can we grow a real company? Like if you can't rely on clients coming in, like if you're just hope and prayer marketing, like it's not really a business, So you really want to build it almost like you could sell it, but you're not going to sell it. Like, that, it's your baby, but still, you have to grow it like a company. So that's what I started helping women with. And then it's sort of, I'm still doing that, but it's sort of taken, like taken on a new light, if you will, over the last couple of years, because I did like some deeper work, and there was a journey that I had to go through that like I built it to a pretty big point myself. And I hit an upper limit. I hit wounds that I hadn't really excavated. I hit burnout and overwhelm, like many, many, many women in our industry are experiencing. And so sort of like had to do a lot of deep healing, which I'm happy to share around.
Yeah.
And sort of that is what's coming into really helping women now, like with the business. Like we have to do this deeper work, because if we don't, and we're just like trying to grow something because we have, and like we're ignoring these traumas that are still living underneath the surface, like they'll surface. We'll self-sabotage and burn it all down, and you know, all that stuff. And the planet, like really, I don't say this lightly, like, and woo-woo like, but the planet really does need a lot of wealthy women in this world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly my message at this point too, is we're the ones who are going to fix this stuff. And the data shows that women give at much higher levels to causes that need our support and to help humanity than men do, even though we hold a lot less of the world's money than men do. So this is super, super important. All right. So what was this healing? You grew your business to a certain point, and then you realized like just something happened. Like, did you just not want to do it anymore? Were you just in pain? Like, what was it? And then what was that healing process?
Yeah. I mean, personally for me, it was that everything else wasn't really working. Like I had money and I had success, but I didn't have intimacy. I wanted to experience deeper levels of romantic intimacy or love in my life. And I was dating, I had relationships, but like none were going to the level that I really knew was possible. And that was part of, because I've been a part of the Mary Magdalene, Isis, like divine feminine lineage for a long time. And like, I've been, you know, my soul's been doing this work for a long time. I know that. And so like, I could see around me this like deep, like twin flame-ish kind of like soulmate love that I saw people having. And I wasn't attracting that level in my life. And so that pain, really was the catalyst for me going like, okay, I know enough to know that then it's kind of me. Like I can only point at me. So something's missing, you know, if I keep getting the same result year after year, even though I think I'm doing all the work, but it's not still happening, then I don't see something. So, like I started doing a bunch of work, but the most significant was psychosomatic healing. So working with a somatic psychotherapist. And I hadn't been in therapy in years. I had done some therapy really early because of, you know, like I kind of knew like my parents were divorced. My dad wasn't really around after like I was 12. He was sort of in and out of my life, you know? And so I knew enough to know that that was probably something. But I did some therapy like in my 20s. But then when I found spirituality, I honestly like threw therapy in the garbage. I was like, all right. I was just like,
I already found like what's therapy? That's kind of old.
There's just no point in going into pain. Like you just gotta like, you know, visualize what you want and then it's just going to happen. And like part of that is true. Like I've outwardly created an amazing life, right? And so many people are really, you know, impressed and blah, blah, blah. I've traveled the world. I've created my own business. I'm an entrepreneur. I make good money, all that stuff. So yes, part of that law of attraction, positive thinking stuff is true, but it does come up to bite you in the ass because most of it is spiritual bypassing. It's really just like not getting to the root. It's not looking at shadow. It's not looking how you intellectualize things and you stay in your head and you're actually like these wounds are running in your body, which is affecting your vibrational frequency. And you don't realize that. So like a lot of people talking about frequency and vibrational frequency in our industry, but like not many people are talking about the shadow. And if you're not looking at the shadow aspects, you actually, your frequency is not integrated and therefore is not changing. And so you can't love and light yourself into high vibes is really what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So there's a lot of shame still running. There's a lot of disassociation from the body, which is, I guess, like the main thing that I would say that I realized, that as I started this work, there were blocks to intimacy that I didn't realize I had. Like, I thought that I had done so much work around this. Like, I've done chakra healings and energy work. And like, I mean, I just really thought that I was so available to intimacy as well. And that was kind of the thing that was the factor that informed my desire to, do deeper work, was like, I wasn't being met in the emotionally available, intimate ways with men that I wanted to be. Right. And so that was my like question, like, why is that? And then as I started unpacking it with a psychotherapist, and a somatic one, I say somatic because these psychotherapists, point you to your body, which I think is the most important. Like, talk therapy doesn't really do anything over time. It is sort of that thing where you just talk and talk and talk and talk. And like, that's a lot of the negative stuff that people say around therapy, right? But like, let's not throw it in the garbage though, because there's really intelligent somatic ways to get access to actual balls of energy that are still like kind of dimming your light, that you need to go and find and clear out. Like, that needs to happen.
Yes. Yes.
So it was that. It was like, I then started to notice how I was avoidant to intimacy. I didn't know how to deepen with someone. I like blew things up as soon as things didn't go my way. Like, I really didn't know how to have rupture and repair in relationship. Like, if someone hurt me, I didn't even know how to tell them they hurt me, without shaming and blaming them. I didn't know how to not vilify someone and make them wrong and me right, like all of a sudden, because they, in my mind, they did something wrong. Anyway, it was just all of these ways that I was separating myself from deepening into my heart and then being able to deepen with someone. And this was also affecting my business that I didn't even realize, because if you're not good at relationships, then it's also going to come up with your business, not just with clients and your actual relationships with your clients, but your marketing and your copywriting, which is a huge thing that's changed for me so much. And what I'm, teaching my clients is just like deeper, intimate ways of marketing that will change the game and is really important right now, as we see a lot of like bro marketing that we see, and like a lot of superficial stuff that isn't, helping us move forward in the way that we need to in the ascended, like divine feminine time.
Let's dive in there. I know that's a piece of what you're taking a stand for. And this year, I love what you said, this feminine embodiment and integrity over bro marketing and the toxic masculinity in the coaching space. So what were you seeing that was pissing you off? Because that's often what we're taking a stand for, is like, and I would say to my people, like, go follow the thing that's pissing you off, that's really irritating you. And again, I'd be like, I don't want to look at that. I actually put that question out recently, and then I'll hear your answer. I asked people, what irritates you about the coaching industry? I was doing some research for an event I was attending, and this was kind of the pre-work. And one woman got really mad that people were saying what irritated them. She's like, what's really irritating me is people's negative responses on this. I go, I didn't ask them what they love about the coaching industry. I asked them specifically what irritates them. And so she was, kind of bypassing, like, you're not allowed to say
100%
negative. And, again, I weren't shaming her for that. I just said they were being honest. They were answering the question,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's just that. So what were you seeing? And then what is your solution to that? What is what you're seeing now? Because I'm really wanting to hear this, because I see how you come out online, and it's, you're very, you're very out there. And I love that, because I feel like I'm out there too. But when I see women who are like really radiating light, then it's nice to see what's that backstory. What were you seeing in the industry? And then what have you been doing that's working really well and you're teaching your people?
Yeah. Awesome question. I think that when I'm listening to you say that, what I remember is this time where I started to examine fulfillment and intimacy, was a point where I was like at the height of, what I had done in my business. So I was making money. I had lots of clients. I had multiple programs. We were doing, high ticket, everything was going really well. And I didn't have like the fulfillment that I really wanted. And that led me to doing this deeper work. And so I think what started pissing me off, and the reason it started pissing me off, was I kept seeing ads from what I feel is sort of like a toxic masculine paradigm that's still going. And this isn't gender specific, right? It's just a toxic masculine, like surface, superficial way of being like, you just need the like 7 steps to the 7 figures. And like, then that's it. And I'm not saying you can't like label your webinar that if you want to, that's fine. But if there's no depth in understanding that like 7 figures doesn't happen by just like implementing a few steps and then like you have it. Like it just doesn't, right? There's so much more to it. And we all need to start taking, like in my stand is that we all need to taking a stand for everyone, like healing their fucking wounds, like healing their trauma, noticing where like they may have not been met emotionally as a child, and they're still playing this out. Like they're trying to be then met with money and success and fame, and it's never going to fill their cup. Like, so I had to experience it to then come into full embodiment with it. And then I think that's why it started pissing me off so much. Cause I'm like, let's not perpetuate that on the planet. It's actually re-traumatizing everyone when you're trying to sell them into this superficial, solution and not really. And it's okay if you can still sell a program and tell them you have like a methodology and 7 steps and here's what you do. But like, I just want everyone to be doing the work. So, cause you can't bring this to your clients. Like you can't notice if they're still coming from a wounded place or a shadowed place around, say, visibility or being met emotionally unless you've done this work.
Absolutely.
And so like so many coaches out there haven't, and like I was one, so I don't want to shame it, right? Like I didn't know all that I know now, right?
Well, with your point, you said you've gotten that whole spiritual world, and I think you and I both work with spiritual women, and listen, I love the whole spiritual space, but exactly what you're talking about is that people get into that space and they think like, I'm all set because I'm meditating and, you know, I'm vibing and I'm connecting with my angels and I have crystals, you know, and that's beautiful. And you love the world. And if you haven't dealt with your shits, because we all have it, we all have these traumas. Like you, with therapy, I mean, big time for me. And I use a type of therapy called EMDR, which gets into the body, and it freaking changed my life. My sister died when I was a teenager. I don't know if you know lots of these stories about me, but I carried that wound. My massive ass wound. I have a major, you know, the mother wound right there with me. I'm estranged from my mother at this current time. So, you know, I've done a lot of work on this, and I actually have a coaching school. And so this is what I look for with my students. I say to them, number 1, you have to do your own work. And number 2, if and when you work with a client who needs therapy, because you're not a therapist unless you're already a therapist. Okay. Yeah. You must refer out. Like you must, you can't love and light through this. Like you've got to refer them out. All of my
mastermind clients know that I require them to have a therapist while they're working with me.
Oh, okay. Good. Yeah. Very good.
So absolutely. Yeah, like they at least have to do some semblance of this work and like how long they stay in it. But usually they do stay the whole, you know, like they stay with their therapist because they then realize they have it. But I just say like, you need to be doing this work, and I'm not the one to take you through. I can do some of it, right? Like I can lead you there, but I'm not a therapist. I don't want to be a therapist. That's not my talk here. I don't want to hold that for you, but we're going to work together long-term, and we are going to get you where you want to go in your life and like what you want to create. You also have to be doing this deeper work with a therapist.
Yes. I'm so glad we're talking about this. This is an important message to get out for this industry, because I feel that we are at this tipping point, you know, like a big piece, and that's why I'm asking what you're taking a stand for. Like, this is really where I'm going with my work in 2019 and beyond, is this discussion around taking a stand and using our platforms for social change, for social justice. So many of the issues happening in the world right now are people who just are putting on their blinders and not looking what's going on. So like, well, that doesn't affect me. And it's like, you and I are both white women. It's like, oh, you can be in our white girl world and nothing can really touch us. And we could just keep going on with this stuff and it would be all right. But once you really awaken to this, you can't go back to that old kind of living in the dark, being oblivious to what's going on in the world, or really allowing that within the clients that you work with, because you just see that, like we talked about, the world needs more wealthy, empowered women. And if you're coming from this place of, once I get my next launch to be blah, blah, then I'm going to be happy, you're never going to get there. You're just not. And we can't afford that to happen. We can't afford that.
And it is happening, unfortunately. And it's kind of a natural, way that we need to be. Like the crisis will create the change, but we need those of us who have done the work. Like that was what I came to almost like recently, just a couple months ago, where I posted this morning on my Facebook about how I've been in this crisis of how do I bring this like emotional embodiment work to business. And I thought they were two different things. And I'm like, how do I do this? And then I was like, wait, no, this is so needed all together. And and then I realized that my mentors, my Ascended Master mentors, were telling me like, it happened to you sort of at the beginning, because there's going to be a lot of women who are going through this, who are going to like be needing this. There's going to be more women this year and next year who are going to get to what they think is their goal and then like have a total burnout, breakdown, like hate their business, quit it because they were out of alignment truly, just because their nervous system was all messed up. So like we need those of us who are familiar with this to help guide these women, because we are all needed. Like I'm not saying there's not space. Like there is. Come, like, do it. Like let's go together. We need everyone, but let's do the work and do the work if you're called to do it. If you're listening right now, then there's probably some work that you need to do. And like the most courageous thing I've done, you haven't asked me yet, is this work.
Yes. Okay. So that's your gutsiest move, is the willingness to just get in there.
Yeah, most people would think I get chills right now. So like, most people, I think they're most impressed with this story about how I then like left corporate and traveled all around the world and all that stuff. I'm like, yes, that's cool. But now when I think like the most gutsiest, courageous move I've ever done was actually hear the battle cry of my own heart that needed me to like take the film off and allow myself to soften and to like feel the wounds, do the inner child healings, all the stuff I've fucking avoided for like many years.
I feel like I love these conversations. Sometimes I'm like, I'm just talking to myself, but you live in a place, and we did it at different times, but we all got there event. A lot of us will get there eventually. And I'm just so happy to have had this conversation with you, because again, I get it. And I think a lot of our listeners do too. And it's just so freaking important to talk about. This is the work. If you can see the poster, behind my desk, the work continues, stay fierce. And one of my lines I always say is, the work is the way. The work isn't putting the pretty pictures up on Instagram and Facebook and, and trying to get people to respond. The work is like you getting into the therapist's office and freaking realizing, you know what, that broke my heart. And I never admitted it because I didn't know that I could. And my parents divorced also, and realizing that does have an impact on you and how you see relationships and how you see men, how you see women. Can't trust men. So we better freaking hustle for everything. We got to make sure we are independent. We never have to depend on somebody.
And alone.
Exactly. And what is that? And how does it impact our ability to be intimate with a romantic partner in our business? Our willingness to put ourselves out there and risk rejection, which is so much of what business is, right?
So
putting
much
ourselves
being
out there.
Seen.
Oh yeah. And someone being like, no, I don't want to work with you. Or
no.
I used to think you were cool, but now I don't anymore.
Exactly. I don't like what you're doing now,
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally. You're like, okay. I'll share this, and then I know we're at the end of time, and thank you for your just generosity of spirit today. I was doing some deep work with my therapist, and I've been working with her for years. I say to my people, I'm like, I don't hold it back. I'm like, I don't know why we talk about the work we do with our coaches, but then we seem to like hide the therapy.
Totally. That's why I mentioned it too. Cause I'm like, we need to normalize this stuff.
Yeah. Destigmatize. Like if the whole world was in therapy, like we would have a way less drama. Okay.
So much better.
Like the shootings would basically go away.
Exactly. Trauma and addiction. This is why we have the problems we have.
This is it. We pretend it's not happening. We're like, no, we don't have that. We don't talk about that. That is ugly. That is private. We don't.
In the past, it's gone.
It's cool. And they drink it away, all the stuff, numb out. So I was working with my therapist recently, and it was, we hit up against this stuff, and I was explaining kind of where I am. We do so much of my work as business with her. I call her my business therapist because that's so much of what it is. Yeah. She goes, you know what this is doing, Jenny? You're just triggering yourself what happened in your childhood. where you felt abandoned, where you felt alone, where you felt like you were the only one and no one was there for you and you had to do it all by yourself and figure it out and no one was going to help you and no one was going to come and get you. And, you know, all these things like, oh my God, you're so right. And so that willingness to see it for what it is and realize you're not this little girl anymore. You're safe. You're an adult. You're amazing. You're strong. You're capable. You know, and we have to then be willing to make better choices with who we surround ourselves in terms of friends, you know, inner circle, who we actually want our clients to be. Maybe we're not even around the people who we can truly be ourselves with. And so we're kind of operating on those old paradigms. Wow, Tara, you're incredible. Where can people find out? Where do you want to take them?
I feel like we could talk and talk and talk. There's just so many things that come up around this. So thank you for having me. My website is taramullarkey.com. So you can, my last name, but I'm sure they can see it in the show notes. You can find me. Okay. Facebook, Instagram is feminine.embodiment. And where else? That's it.
And you're very yeah, everyone should go check you out because like I said, I mean, that's why I reached out. We initially had initial conversation, I don't know, a few years ago, something like that. And then that yeah, totally. But I, you know, continue to, I always, you know, Facebook is a funny place. And so there's stuff that you're kind of like, this is weird. And then there's other stuff you go, oh, wow, this is awesome. And so there'll people who come across my radar and you're one of them. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing and the stand that you're taking and how you really are like, you're just doing it. Like those are the women I vibe with right now, whether they be ones I'm going to have conversations with, ones I'm going to work with, or ones that I kind of admire from afar, like the Prime Minister of New Zealand, like Greta, young girl in Sweden. Greta is her name. She's nominated for a Nobel Prize. And
amazing.
Like that, who are just so freaking doing it. Like we need to surround ourselves with that energy.
Can we just say, like, I think yesterday I posted on my Instagram something like embodied. And when I say embodied, I mean like women who've done this work around disassociation from their body, their sensuality, their sexuality, the wounds and traumas that are still like in their nervous system. Embodied, wealthy women are the most potent force on the planet, politically, globally, and economically. So that is what I'm standing for. And when you think about 4 years ago, we would have never had, I don't even know how many female candidates we have for president of this country, which, you know, like if there's a bright side to what we've been through over the last few years, it's that. And but it is a paradigm shift. It is happening. And women or the feminine, even men who are starting to embrace their feminine will change the world. So exactly. I'm with you 100%.
Game on. And thank you for bringing that up. That's a great way for us to end this conversation today. We have been through a lot over the last few years. We'll continue to go through a lot because that's just where we are in the universe, like in the cosmos right now, because of technology, because we all have access to so much cool information, but we must be willing to really tap into those reservoirs of wisdom. And that's really, I think, what you and I are discussing right now too, is don't kind of think that, well, I know these quote answers. There's no easy way out. Like you can't bypass shit. And I think I wrote something down as you were speaking, which was the only way out is through. And so for those of you who tuned in, you're realizing that some of this stuff is coming up for you and you're like, your nervous system is tapped out. You just feel like you're always this anxious ball of energy. You're comparing and despairing. You feel like you're at that breaking point. Then just do this for yourself. Go and find someone. And it sounds like you worked with somebody locally. Were you in the room, like physically with them?
Yes.
Yeah. I know there's different options around that, but it's so worth it.
Just find someone who resonates with you. Yeah. It's the most important work. And then if you are working with mentors and coaches, work with someone who has at least knowledge of this. That's the thing. The thing that I'm standing for as well in this work is like, now that you have this awareness, like find a therapist to do your own work. But then if you are hiring mentors to help you with other areas of your life, coaches, mentors, programs, find women and men who are really embodying this work, this deeper work. And that will also serve you.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. This was Tara Mullarkey. You are incredible, Tara. And
thanks, Jenny.
So much for being here. This is Jenny Fennig sending you so much love, magic, and confidence as you get gutsy. I'll see you next time.
Hey, this is John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and you're listening to Get Gutsy with Jenny Fennig. Gutsy leaders unite and ignite.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Get Gutsy as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. Are you responsible for leading and growing your spiritual business? If so, I have a free tool for you that will help you spread your message like wildfire. It's called the Sacred Marketing Puzzle, and it's a one-page PDF guide that simplifies the often mysterious and confusing world of marketing. When you use sacred marketing tools to amplify your message, you'll provide huge value to your tribe and grow your business. What are you waiting for? Go to jennyfennig.com/puzzle to get yours instantly. That's jennyfennig.com/puzzle. Gutsy leaders, unite.